Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
You are now listening to the Unscripted Ohio podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Grove and in part by JFQ Lending. All your home purchase and refinance needs should be handled by a Buckeye. You'll never pay for your appraisal with these guys. Licensed in 33 states and more on the way. Check them out at jfqlending.com. For the latest news, notes, analysis, and discussion, check us out on BuckeyeGrove.com and follow us on Twitter at UnscriptedOhio1. Now, broadcasting from Podcast Central, a place that is not his mother's basement.
Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
We promise. Here's your host, Kyle Lamb.
Hey, Ma! The meatloaf!
What a weekend. CBJ making the Tampa Bay Lightning bend the knee, going up 3-0 in Columbus on Sunday evening. Chance to get that very elusive first series win ever in franchise history. And how about Tiger Woods? Tiger taking his place back on the golf throne this weekend, winning the Masters for the first time in 14 years. It's been that kind of weekend. Welcome back to the Unscripted Ohio podcast. I am your host, Kyle Lamb. We are brought to you by JFQ Lending and BuckeyeGrove.com, and also partly brought to you by Go Bus. Man, it was a fantastic sports weekend. Not just a sports weekend, but a fantastic weekend for entertainment. Of course, we had the spring game, which I'm going to be talking a lot about here in just a minute. But I got to say, this was one of the most fun weekends I've had, for entertainment in a long time. You've got the NHL playoffs, you've got the NBA playoffs, you had the spring game, you had the Masters, and I'm going to say up front, look, I was not rooting for Tiger Woods. I've kind of been sick of the Tiger Woods hype for the past several years because it was coming from a place where I'm just going to reason with you, just going to level with you. I didn't think we would ever get back to this point. I didn't think we'd see Tiger win another tournament. He has won another tournament since, but I especially didn't think he would win another major. And, the hype all this week around Tiger winning the Masters, I just kind of rolled my eyes every time I heard it. And even through Saturday, I was kind of rooting against it just because I was sick of the hype, and I didn't think it would happen. It's like, people just need to get a grip. It's not going to happen, okay? It's like Gretchen on Mean Girls, stop trying to make fetch happen. And that's how it felt. To stop trying to make this Tiger Woods comeback happen. It's not going to happen. But I got to say, as Tiger walked down the fairway towards the green there at 18 on Sunday afternoon, and knowing he only had to two-putt or less to win the Masters title, and then seeing him actually do it, it was an incredible thing to witness. It's been 11 years since he last won a major. Really great sports story, and we had a lot of great sports stories this weekend. As I said, how about the Columbus Blue Jackets, going up 3-0 on Tampa? I don't even know how to explain how historic this would be if they pull off the sweep, because the President's Cup trophy winner has never been swept by any team, let alone in the first round in one of probably the biggest, point spreads, I think, or, money line spreads we've ever seen in NHL betting. And I'm sure there have been bigger upsets. If this happens, there probably would have been bigger upsets, but nobody wanted to see Columbus play Tampa because they were outscored, I think, 17-3 in the three meetings this year. And I know this is a different Columbus team. They did acquire Matt Duchene. They acquired Ryan Dzingel, both from Ottawa. And this really changed the team. And it's not like the Blue Jackets came out of nowhere. They won 7 out of the last 8 games to end the regular season. But nobody saw this coming. Columbus has dominated the last 2 2/3 games for the most part, and now they find themselves up 3-0. They can close out the unbelievable sweep on Tuesday. Would be the first franchise playoff series win, and it's just it'd be incredible for the city of Columbus. And I got to tell you, the way Columbus is playing right now, this series isn't over, but there's a possibility this won't stop here. I mean, they are playing so well. This would be a Cinderella story to see them advance deep into the playoffs. I hope it happens. It'd be great for the city. It'd certainly be great for Blue Jackets fans that have been around since the beginning of the franchise for 18 seasons or whatever it's been. Long awaited. I hope they close it out on home ice on Tuesday, get that sweep, and then prepare for the Toronto-Boston winner. So congratulations to the Columbus Blue Jackets, up 3-0 in the series against the number 1 seed, the President's Cup Trophy winner, Tampa Bay Lightning, who tied for an NHL regular season 62 victories this year. So just amazing stuff here by the Blue Jackets, amazing stuff by Tiger Woods. Game of Thrones, you heard the intro. Great season 8, final season premiere on Sunday night. I'm not going to spoil anything for you if you haven't watched it yet, and I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't watched any of the series and are still thinking about catching up. But let me just say this, quick analysis without giving anything away. It was a great season setter, I guess I would put it, because it kind of got you ready for the home stretch and all of the things that are going to come here in the final season. And there were a few great moments, a few long-awaited moments in the series that people have been expecting. I thought, I'm not going to say that I wanted to wait 2 years since the last episode aired, but I guess if you're going to wait that long, it was almost worth the wait. And Game of Thrones hitting its stride now, 5 episodes to go. If you haven't started to watch, you've got basically another 5 weeks to start from episode 1 to get all the way through it. And if you haven't done it by now, maybe you just don't want to, but you have 5 weeks to watch 68 episodes now, and you could watch live then with everybody else as the final season premiere coming up here in another 5 weeks from now. So you can catch up. You can do, maybe an episode or 2 per day, and that should get you caught up before the end of the season. But Game of Thrones season premiere came last night. It was great. It was awesome. If you haven't seen it, by all means, get done. So let's backtrack now. This is the reason we're here, Ohio State football. The spring game, came and went on Saturday, and I have a lot of things to talk about. Let's start at a very easy place to begin, because it was the public debut of Justin Fields, the first time that the public at large has been able to see him put on the scarlet and gray. And actually, he wore, the black alternate jersey, so it was gray pants, but black alternate jersey. So it wasn't really the scarlet and gray, but, we're not going to be technical. People need to remember this very basic premise. It is not just a spring game. It is a limited sample size. And it's not just a limited sample size. It's not just a spring game. It was an exhibition in which the game was shortened to 10-minute quarters. The last 2 of the 4 quarters were running clock. He was alternating possessions with Matthew Baldwin. And it was basically a game of touch football. They did away with the tackling. And they call it thud tackling. That was how Ryan Day explained it would be before the game. I was a little confused throughout the game what exactly the rules were on the tackling because it didn't seem real consistent. It's almost like the NFL catch rule. I joked on Twitter about this. It's like an NFL catch. We don't know what constitutes a catch in the NFL. And I almost felt like for the first quarter and a half, I didn't really know what constituted a tackle in this game. And I said last week with Johnny when he was on the Friday podcast to preview the game, I wasn't very happy about the format, though I understand it. I'm not going to pretend I liked it because I didn't. And I still, even though I understand why they were doing this format, I'm not sure I was real keen on, seeing this touch football. But as the game went along, it seemed to me they were letting tackling go on when the ball was being handed off to the running backs and running between the tackles. They seem to be letting some tackling get away in that format. And if it was outside the tackle box, And it seemed to be you had to wrap up. And if it were quarterbacks, either sacks or running, you basically just put two hands on them, two-hand tap, and the play was blown dead. From what I could gather, that was how the tackling rules were going along as the game went along and how the officials were calling it. Now, but again, Justin Fields was playing in a glorified exhibition game, and that's basically what this has become because it wasn't even real football. It was for the fans. It was an exhibition, and I know people were freaking out. He had 3 of 14 or 5 of 13, whatever that was. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, and that just actually is probably the reason. Maybe I should have done the research and I should have looked at the exact numbers, but that's the whole point. The numbers aren't important. You have to remember, Justin Fields is still a true freshman. He's had a total of 15 practices, since he transferred to Ohio State. 15 practices he's had, and he's still a true freshman. Remember that. He's not going to be a sophomore until later this summer. So he is a true freshman. He's had 15 practices at Ohio State. There are still 29 more practices coming up this fall. He's going to have plenty of time to work out some of the kinks. And I got to remind people, Dwayne Haskins last year went 9 of 19 in the spring game. And remember, that was his second year, the end of his second year in the program. And this was his third year in the program this past season. And he went 9 of 19 in the spring game. And he actually, if you just go by the spring game stats and numbers, he got outplayed by Joe Burrow. And I don't think it was pronounced enough that anybody ever thought that Joe Burrow was going to win the job over Dwayne Haskins, but he was outplayed, and he didn't look very good in the spring game, and we can all see what happened with Dwayne Haskins. He got better. He had a great summer. He had a great fall. And as the season went along, you remember the Dwayne Haskins, I'll actually go so far to say this, the Dwayne Haskins we saw at the end of the year was not even the Dwayne Haskins we saw at the beginning of the year. He improved that much from the start of the season to the end of the season. But if you think back to the spring game and the Michigan game and the year before that, he had gone a long way. And that is a guy that had been in the program 2, and then this past year, a 3rd season. So keep that in mind with Justin Fields. When you think about that spring game, here's the plus is the intangibles are there. He's smart. He seems to be a good leader as he gets, from everything I've heard from practice, I think he's going to be a great leader. He's a smart kid. He's had excellent grades in high school and college so far. I think all of the intangibles are there. And you look at the physical attributes. He's very quick. He had a great run up the middle, a little spin move. He's definitely a great runner. I know he's been compared to JT Barrett, but I actually think he's a quicker runner than JT Barrett. I think he's got faster foot speed. He's a little bit like, kind of the Terrell Pryor strides, and that, he doesn't look blazing fast, but because he got those long strides, he's deceptively fast, and he runs by you. It doesn't look fast, but with the long stride, he just kind of runs by you. And as far as arm strength, he's not going to be confused for Dwayne Haskins, but you could see the arm is there. It's better than, maybe even Joe Burrow. It's better than JT Barrett. It's probably up there with a Terrell Pryor arm or maybe even Braxton Miller arm. But, it's not Dwayne Haskins, but Dwayne Haskins wasn't Dwayne Haskins. So maybe you get just a little bit less of an arm, but I think the accuracy with time, once he gets into the system and gets comfortable with the new receivers and everything around him, the new surroundings, I'm very excited, to watch this play out because I think Fields looked pretty good despite the sheer numbers. He had some passes batted down. He overthrew a couple. He underthrew a couple. But when push comes to shove, the talent is there. Give it some time. He's got 29 more practices coming up in the fall. I think you're going to see a different Justin Fields when he takes the field for the first time in an Ohio State uniform officially later this fall, late August. It's going to be a different situation. So if you know of anybody that's freaking out, just calm them down. Remind them of Dwayne Haskins. Remind them this is an exhibition where the rules were completely different. It was touch football. He's in a new system. He's had 15 practices. If ever there were a reason that you need to take this with a grain of salt, this is the time. Now, I mentioned one of the reasons I think it was tough, for him to get rhythm is he was alternating at quarterback on the Gray roster with Matthew Baldwin. And that's a key thing to remember because, it wasn't just the format or the fact that he's new in the system. It's that, they were rotating quarterbacks to get him both snaps. Now, Matthew Baldwin got a lot more snaps because he played partially on the Gray and he was also playing on the Scarlet as well. And some have asked, why did Matthew Baldwin get so many more snaps? I think it's two reasons. I think number one, I think they were trying to preserve Fields a little bit and minimize the risk of injury because I think they know, even though the quarterback battle may not be officially decided and they may be telling you it's an open competition, in the back of their minds, they don't want Justin Fields getting hurt. So I think they minimized his reps so that they could minimize the risk of injury. And I think the other part of it, too, is they want Baldwin to be involved. They're going to need both quarterbacks ready and able this season. God forbid Justin Fields goes down. They're going to need to spring in Matthew Baldwin to action. So I think they want to get him as many reps. They want to see how he handles it, how he handles game situations. And look, I was impressed with Baldwin as well. I think when you look at sheer skill and physical talent, you can see why Justin Fields is the 5-star, and he looked like the 5-star out there with a couple plays. He had the 98-yard touchdown pass to Ben Victor. That was a great throw. It was a little underthrown, but it was in the air almost 50 yards. And then you see the 50-yard run that he had. You see little bits and pieces of why he's the 5-star talent. But Matthew Baldwin, I thought, looked pretty good for the most part. I mean, he had some overthrows. I got to tell you, I think that Baldwin was kind of a victim of trying a little too hard. He had that the energy, he had the juices flowing, the big crowd, 60,000 people there, which, by the way, low for Ohio State standards, but it was still the third best spring game attendance in the country this year, behind Nebraska and Alabama. So it was right up there with the usual suspects as far as fan support. But I felt like Baldwin was trying, because remember, he did not take part in last spring. He did not take part in fall. He didn't get a play because of the injury. So this was his first opportunity to go out before an Ohio State crowd. And I felt like he was a little too juiced up and trying to prove himself. He was trying to show off his arm strength. He was trying to show off making a big throw downfield. And because of that, you saw the ball sail on him several times. I thought for the most part he did a pretty good job with reads, but he did make a couple mistakes throwing into double coverage. There was one play when he threw the double coverage on the fade down the right side of the field, and it got picked off. That was a play where he actually looked at Garrett Wilson on the left side first, and Wilson had a big cushion. I think he had like 8-10 yard cushion where it was he probably should have gone on the in route, but I think he was trying too hard to make the fancy look, the fancy read, and then he didn't see the safety going over on the other side and threw into the double coverage and got himself into trouble. And that's a mark of a kid that, even if he's talented, even if he's going to be a great intellectual quarterback, in the head, reading plays, the pre-snap reads and stuff like that, that's a mistake that you see from inexperience. And I felt like the inexperience, along with, just the extra oomph that he was trying to give for the crowd, that led to some of those mistakes. But overall, he was 20 of 36 or something, 246 yards passing. He showed some flashes too. I think Ohio State, if Justin Fields didn't exist or didn't go to Ohio State, and it was a battle between Matthew Baldwin and Tate Martell, I got to be honest, I said this back, even several months ago before Justin Fields arrived at Ohio State, I felt like Matthew Baldwin had a chance to win the job. Everybody was assuming it'd be Tate Martell, but I felt like Matthew Baldwin was talented enough to win the job. He's a better passer than Tate Martell. And I'm not saying that because of a disastrous spring game, reportedly, by Tate down at Miami, where got every review that I read, he was getting roasted for his performance. I mean, he apparently, and I'm just going by what I read because I didn't see the game. And again, it's spring game, so it doesn't matter at the end of the day. The stats don't matter. But for people talking about how much Justin Fields struggled, I guess Tate Martell took it to another level down there in Coral Gables. But the point here is I felt like all along Baldwin had a chance to beat out Tate, even if Tate had stuck around, because I think he's a better passer. I think he's more talented. I think he's more capable of running the offense. Who knows where Matthew Baldwin will go from here, whether he's the starting quarterback somehow or whether he's a backup. And who knows what will happen and become of Tate down at Miami. But I think Matthew Baldwin, if Tate weren't around, if Justin Fields, or if Tate were around but Justin Fields was not, I think Matthew Baldwin could be the starting quarterback at Ohio State, and I think they could be very successful under him. You know, is he the most talented guy they've ever had? No, he's probably not as talented as Fields. He's not as talented as Haskins. Maybe not as talented as Terrell Pryor or Braxton Miller, but he is a really good passer. He's a savvy kid. You know, he's got a nice, easy throwing motion. There's a lot to like about Matthew Baldwin. Anyhow, though, regardless of what I think about Baldwin, I do think Justin Fields will be the starting quarterback, and I don't think any of the spring game performance is going to be an issue when fall camp rolls around. People will have forgotten this performance until the next time it happens, and then we'll have to bring up, Dwayne Haskins, remember his bad spring game, or Justin Fields, remember his bad spring game. It's just going to be an anecdotal lesson in history when push comes to shove. But what I like about this Ohio State offense from what I see, it doesn't appear to be much different from what we've seen last year. They might bring back a little bit of an emphasis on the zone read. They flashed it a couple times on Saturday, and I think Justin Fields will be a much better, much more capable quarterback of running it, of course, than Dwayne Haskins. I think they're going to be able to run it similarly to the way they did under JT Barrett. They just won't need to do it as frequently. I think the passing game will be there. I mean, good grief. Garrett Wilson, I've been preaching how good I think this guy is. I called him at one point a few months ago kind of a hybrid between Odell Beckham and Michael Thomas. You know, Michael Thomas, of course, being the Ohio State guy that everybody is familiar with. Really good route runner. He doesn't necessarily have elite speed, but he's good hands, good body control, and great route runner. And that's Garrett Wilson. He's not going to burn you with elite speed, but he's got very good hands, very good feet, very good body control. He's going to be the real deal, and it might happen as soon as this season. I don't think we're going to have to wait very long to see Garrett Wilson make an impact at Ohio State. But you look at Mack, you look at Victor, you look at Wilson, you look at Chris Olave. Jalen Gill played really well at the spring game. If you put DeMario McCall back in the backfield as a playmaker or a little bit of at H-back, the playmakers are there for Ohio State. You know, Jeremy Ruckert, of course. Rashad Berry had a big catch in the spring game. There are playmakers all across the field, and I think what Ohio State really has to its advantage going for them, I think the run game is going to bounce back this year. You know, no pun intended. You know, because I felt one of the problems with the run game last year was both J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber trying to bounce it out a little too much, and maybe that was impatience. Maybe that was the line not blocking very well. I think with Weber, I think the prolonged nagging injuries may have affected the physicality, because he was never shying away from a hit. But I felt like, you know, if you've got a lot of injuries nagging you and you're in a lot of pain, you know, maybe you're trying to avoid a hit a few more times in the course of a game than you ordinarily would. And I think that probably bothered Weber. Dobbins, I don't think that's the case, but they both got a little bounce happy. I think this year, with Dobbins, and I really loved what I saw out of Master Teague and Marcus Crowley. I didn't know what to expect from Crowley because I had only seen highlight tapes, of course. Probably 99.9% of you listening had only seen the highlights. But man, that guy, he was looking for contact, and I know it's easy to do in a game where you're not going to be tackled, but you know, he was putting hits on potential tacklers. He was bouncing it out. He looked like he had great speed, good vision. I think Crowley and Teague along with J.K. Dobbins, are going to be a very productive running back core. I think the line is going to improve. I think when you add in the dimension of Justin Fields doing the zone read and, having the versatility that he has, I think you're going to see a lot better run game, and the pass game is going to continue to do very well. Even if there's a slight drop-off in passing from Haskins to Fields, the added element of the return of a productive run game, I think, is going to balance Ohio State out just a little bit more. So you've got Dobbins, you've got Teague, and you got Crowley, and then you throw in McCall there. And I think you've got 3 or 4 running backs that are very, very capable of producing for Ohio State this season. Really liked what I saw in limited time from these players. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, we saw a very defense-oriented spring game, and maybe that's because of the format. And it's hard to differentiate, where the offense struggles and the defensive production begins and ends. And there's a middle ground there somewhere, and I don't know where that line begins and ends. But I will say this. I think Ohio State's defensive backfield, maybe not so much Lloyd Mfarquhar. That was a name I didn't actually know or recognize until his name was called on the PA speaker there at Ohio Stadium. I'm not going to include him in this conversation, but when you look at the guys that we know are going to get time, with Damon Arnett and Jeffrey Okudah and Sean Wade and Josh Proctor, I think is, gunning to be the second starting safety with Jordan Fuller, who did not play on Sunday. You look at that defensive backfield, I think you start to put those together with Taraja Mitchell, who, I thought he looked fantastic on Saturday. From what we could make, he's not able to run around and make plays in a traditional tackle football game. But I thought he looked really good. His instincts and I mean, my God, he looked like a guy that was built in a lab to play football. And I think he's going to challenge Chuck Borland for playing time on the inside. We spoke on this on Friday of the podcast, Johnny and I. I actually could see Baron Browning moving out to the outside a little bit because I think Mitchell is going to be tough to stay off the field, but I think they still like Borland, who did not play this spring. And I'm not of the belief that they're ready to give up on Borland like some of the fans are. I think you're going to see him back healthier this year, 1 year removed from that Achilles surgery. I think he'll be quicker than what we saw on the field this past year. And so I think Borland and Mitchell will split time in the middle, and I anticipate Browning moving to the outside to get some time along with Harrison and Warner and some of the other guys in the mix. But the Ohio State defense looks like it's going to be in great hands. You had a couple guys that really kind of impressed me on the edge. Tyreek Smith made some plays. Noah Potter was quicker around the edge than I anticipated. And some people were commenting on Twitter, Alex Williams, the kid from West Virginia, or kid from Pickerington that had committed to West Virginia. He looked impressive as well. So you've got a lot of talent there on the defensive side of the ball. It's hard to say how this translates. Again, this is just a spring game. I'm not going to get carried away with any observations from what I saw on Saturday. But as you would imagine, the talent and the depth looks to be there. I'm very, very anxious for the season to get going because I think there are a lot of bright spots for Ohio State. Ryan Day has a chance, especially with recruiting. Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison in the 2021 class. It looks like I think Ohio State is in very good shape there. But there's a lot of momentum, especially on the offensive side with skill players. Now, Ohio State still needs to get some of the momentum going in the 2020 class with some guys on the defensive side of the ball, but I think that will come. So it is just a spring game, so don't get carried away with numbers. Don't get carried away with performance. We've seen a lot of players have individual standouts in the past and then wind up being complete no-shows in the regular season or the rest of their careers. Some of the guys that looked good or looked bad on Saturday, there's a good chance there will be some that are never, heard from again. And then there are others that played really poorly and wind up being great players at Ohio State. That's just the nature of the beast. We're talking about an exhibition game. We're talking about a little mini touch football scrimmage that is made for the fans. And that's what this is, or at least what it has become. But it is still it's something. It's a chance for us to see spring football. That's what we saw. And by the way, I wanted to say this real quick on a personal note. Johnny and Corey were both able to make it in from Virginia and Florida, respectively. I had a great time hanging out with those guys. And, also our friend Jeff made it in from Illinois. And Trent, you may know him as Buckeye Edits on Twitter. It was a great time hanging out with those guys, watching the game. Corey and Johnny, of course, I'm gonna plug them here real quick. Remember, they'll be back on Wednesday with a podcast. I'm sure they'll talk more about the spring game. So if you want to hear Johnny and Corey, check back in on the Unscripted Ohio Network. Either on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify. The Scarlet and Gray podcast will be back on Wednesday, and Johnny and Corey will have plenty more analysis of the spring game, and they will give their thoughts and, their observations of what happened on Saturday, and, maybe some other quips about the trip into Columbus, Ohio on Saturday and hanging out with yours truly. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad they were able to make it up. So, hey, Ohio State spring game, it's over with. Ohio State spring football is over with. Now we make the long trek to August. It's going to be a long wait. We've got about 3 months, 2.5 months till fall football really starts rolling around, and then we can start getting hyped about the 2019 Ohio State football season. So, hey, there are plenty of things to keep your attention, to distract you until August comes around, whether it's Blue Jackets hockey. Again, Columbus up 3-0 on Tampa. Chance to close out the series on Tuesday. There's baseball. I know the Indians not really playing well. The Reds getting it going a little bit after that 1-8 disastrous start. They did win 4 in a row before losing Sunday night to St. Louis. So maybe baseball is not your outlet, but NHL playoffs, a lot of fun. That'll be a good chance. Good way to distract you. NBA playoffs. I know LeBron's not there. The Cavs aren't there. But there are some other distractions. Game of Thrones, show Billions I love a lot. Plenty of ways to spend the rest of your next 3 months until Ohio State football gets cranked up again. But hey, that's going to wrap it up for me. Reminding you that Unscripted Ohio is supported by GoBus. You can ride to over 40 stops across Ohio, connecting rural communities to Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. Get to Ohio State games with GoBus. Bring comfort back to traveling. Check them out on ridegobus.com or call 1-888-95-GO-BUS. That's ridegobus.com, 1-888-95-GO-BUS. That's going to wrap it up for the Unscripted Ohio podcast. Again, you can catch me on Twitter at KYLAM8. Catch us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify, and every Monday and Friday on BuckeyeGrove.com. We'll be back again on Friday. Johnny and Corey will be with you on the Scarlet and Gray podcast on Wednesday. Hope everybody has a great week. Go Bucks.
You can get new episodes of Unscripted Ohio on Mondays and Fridays exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Ohio State.